this evening's agenda, please, with firstly apologies. No apologies, thank you. We have John Porter is unable to make it to deal with agenda item 5. So Councillor Tina Mackenzie, excuse me, Tina Mackenzie Boyle is here in his stead, and it's lovely to see you here, Tina. Are there any declarations of interest, please? Nobody declaring interest, fine. Okay, the usual caveat applies, please. Should you notice an unexpected turn in debate and feel that you should declare, please do. Councillor Brunel Walker.
No.
Hang on.
Thank you, Councillor Bettison. I have an item to declare on one of the items in the closed session later on as it relates to the joint venture.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. And that's noted. And agenda item 3 is minutes. To consider and approve the minutes of the meeting of the executive that was held on the 17th of July. Do we have a mover for those? Thank you, Councillor Dr. Barnard. And a seconder, please. Councillor Harrison, thank you. All those in favour? None against? Thank you. Councillor Hayden, you'd like to say something?
Just to echo, I have a similar conflict as Councillor Brunel Walker regarding later in the meeting. Okay,
fine. That's understood. Thank you very much indeed. Do we have any urgent items of business? No, thank you very much, Derek. Which takes us then to the first item of business, which is agenda item 5, the integrated enforcement overview and scrutiny review. And I'd now like to officially welcome Councillor Tina Mackenzie Boyle. Councillor Mackenzie Boyle.
Thank you, Councillor Bettison. Well, good afternoon. And firstly, on behalf of the Chair of the Environment and Communities Overview and Scrutiny Panel and me, I'd like to thank all the members and officers from Bracknell Forest Council, our partners and officers from other local authorities who have contributed to the in-depth review of the integrated enforcement. So I'll begin by summarising the review and the panel's work. For local authorities, enforcement covers a wide range of services across various departments and organisations. And as we are all aware, councils regularly have to tackle difficult issues often associated with enforcement. This includes lengthy delays caused by complex cases, public misinformation and rapidly emerging crises. And unfortunately, some of these problems are likely to be exacerbated due to the increasing financial constraints on local authorities. Therefore, the panel wanted to explore whether a more integrated enforcement model could help to improve existing enforcement in Bracknell Forest. The panel identified and reviewed senior officers from Bracknell, including the Executive Director of Place Planning and Regeneration, Assistant Director of Contract Services and the Head of the Public Protection Partnership, in addition to officers from partner organisations such as the Fire Authority and Thames Valley Police. Desktop analysis of policies and other relevant documents were also carried out. As part of our work on good practices in terms of enforcement, we spoke to officers and looked at policies from other borough councils that have been introduced, different variations on integrated enforcement. This included interviewing the Assistant Director of Community and Safety and Environmental Health from the Royal Borough of Greenwich, who had recently overseen the implementation of an integrated enforcement model there. And by using that opportunity to speak to different local authorities about their own approach to enforcement, panel members have deepened their understanding of what good enforcement looks like and how this is reflected in council policy and activity. It was also useful for the panel to hear more on the benefits of the Community Safety Accreditation Scheme by speaking with Thames Valley Police. From these meetings, we discovered that CSAS is a useful enforcement tool available to local authorities that provides additional powers to an approved officer, which can in turn strengthen the relationship with local police. As part of our work on good practices, we found there is no one-size-fits-all integrated enforcement model, obviously. This is because enforcement is highly complex and can be interpreted in many ways, particularly in local authority setting. For some authorities, it can mean the merging of all enforcement services together under one structure, while for others it could simply mean the introduction of one single integrated enforcement policy. As highlighted in the report, the panel was pleased to discover evidence of good practice panel. We were reassured to find a proactive attitude adopted by council officers when crossover between items is required, and that there are productive partnerships with external organisations such as Thames Valley Police or Royal Berks Fire Authority when carrying out enforcement activities. So it was encouraging to learn that the council is working hard to tackle well-known issues associated with enforcement, and it was pleasing to hear that a joint working approach across services with external partners is often adopted by officers. The recommendations therefore put forward by the panel aim to further enhance these efforts to work collaboratively to ensure Bracknell Forest is safer, cleaner and a happier place to live. Before I close, I would like to give thanks to the panel members for their continued support and invaluable contributions. And last but not least, certainly not least, our grateful thanks to our dedicated officer, Joey Gurney, who's been a star organising us and ensuring our papers are in the rightful hands at the rightful times. So a huge thanks to them and to him.
Thank you very much indeed. Colleagues, do we have any questions now on the content? No? If we don't, then that's fine. And I'll hand over to Councillor Harrison.
Chairman, I do have a question to, I think it would be to Mr Gibbs, because it'll be along the lines of the reporting to the panel. There are some really good recommendations here, but one of them I notice is about reporting back on a regular basis to the panel on progress towards a number of things. And I'd just like to be assured that we actually have the officer time to be able to produce those sort of reports, or that it is something that is done in the process of everyday business. Do you have any concerns, Kevin?
Chairman, I'm happy to confirm that as part of our normal process in terms of overview scrutiny reviews, we do regularly check back in on those. So a statutory scrutiny officer, it's built into our work programme to do the reviews and also have the capacity to go back and check that the recommendations have been implemented.
I'd like to comment on the report. I'd like to actually thank the committee for the work that they've done on this, because I know it was a quite thorough and very intense operation, and a lot of things were looked at that don't necessarily go together, but this has pulled things together and given an opportunity to have a bit of a holistic view and think, are we doing this right? In particular, the attention drawn to the CSAS scheme, yes, that will possibly give some of our officers the ability to use legal powers that they don't necessarily have at the moment. I think they will help in enforcement proceedings and possibly also train some of our officers in dealing with conflict situations where they may come into conflict with people doing things that they shouldn't be doing, and it'll give me a bit of peace of mind that having had that training, they are safer, as safe as they can be in doing that. So what I'd like to do is recommend to the executive that we accept this report.
Thank you, everyone. Anybody like to comment? Yes, Councillor Turrell.
Thanks, Leader, and thank you to Councillor Tina Mackenzie Boyle for for the words and for the for fronting up this excellent report from which many hands have been involved. I think the real value of a document like this is that it has taken a slightly different look at to one that might have been done before with scrutiny, in terms of looking at the different areas across the council where scrutiny is used. I think that's useful to see what and the joint working is important because I mean, scrutiny is about rounding up perhaps the more villainous sections of the population who just enforcement is about. And very often they can transgress in more than one way as far as the council is concerned. So joint working is important, and I think work that can be done there to help with that. Also to help with the effectiveness of the various enforcement strategies that we have across the council, I think is really important. So you know, I welcome such a thorough piece of work because you know, it adds great, you know, it makes it a piece of work of standing. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Turrell. Thank you. Would anybody else like to comment? No? Oh yes, indeed. Thank you.
I welcome, and it's gratifying that the executive has taken time on this. So thank you very much, knowing how busy you are. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. So thank you very much indeed for coming along today, and we really do appreciate the work you're doing. Could you please carry that message back to your colleagues, because great job. Thank you. Thank you.
Chairman, just before you begin, there's a problem with the sound online. People online can't hear us.
Oh. We're just hesitating for a moment because I understand that there's some difficulty with sound for those that are not in the room. So
we've just got sound back, Chairman.
Ah, good. Okay, we have the sound back, so we'll continue. That takes us then to agenda item 6, the National Drug Strategy from Harm to Hope. And that's to be introduced by Gráinne Siggins, I believe.
Yes, good evening, colleagues, and thank you, Chair.
Right.
The report that you have in front of you, sorry, are you okay for me to continue, Councillor Birch?
He says yes.
Carry on.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. I was just checking in terms of introduction. So the report you have in front of you outlines the emerging national drug strategy called From Harm to Hope, and actually in which a series of recommendations are made for executive to consider and make a decision on this evening. The drug strategy is a national strategy that outlines the intentions over the next 10 years in relation to tackling drug misuse, and outlining what the key priorities are. Though the key priorities outlined in the report are breaking drug supply chains, delivering a world-class treatment and recovery system, and achieving a generational shift in demand for drugs. The document also includes, but we won't go into in detail, information on the main points of the strategy indicated. Going back to what executive are asked to consider this evening, there are a series of recommendations in relation to how a sub-regional approach is being recommended and what that means for us within Bracknell Forest. So the series of recommendations are included. So firstly, the footprint of a sub-regional combating drugs partnership, which is suggested in the report as outlined in item 2.1. that we recommend the appointment of Stuart Lyons, who is our Director of Public Health, as the Senior Responsible Officer to represent the partnership at that sub-regional level. That we outline a key political lead, or determine and indicate who the key political lead is going to be in relation to member representative for the Combating Drugs Partnership, and to also establish a post across the sub-region to move forward the priorities. So the recommendations as outlined in section 2.1 of the report are put forward for our executive to consider this evening.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Are there any questions for the officer? No. In which case, Councillor Birch, do you like to move?
Thank you. I'm pleased to move the list of recommendations at paragraph 2 from 2.1 to 2.5 with an update at 2.5 that the leader has appointed myself as the member lead on this working group. With that, thank you.
Thank you very much. Seconded by Councillor Dr. Barnard.
Thank you. It's this public health. I think one about this, although this is being driven by Thames Valley Police, I am particularly pleased to see that it's public health that are taking a major lead in the Combating Drugs Partnership as well. And as you've heard, our own Stuart Lyons, who's for Berkshire, is going to be the responsible officer for that. And I also take the opportunity to draw to members' attention the excellent work being done here in Bracknell Forest by our own New Hope under Gillian Hunt, and the really excellent work they have been doing for quite some time, and I know they are keen to get well locked in to this new partnership. And I will be attending the first meeting on the 5th of October in order to get all the usual stuff established, the governance and all that established. So I'm looking forward to being able to report back to members on the initiatives. And of course, one of the things that we as councillors often ask is, where's the money coming from? And I'm pleased to note that there is funding coming to Bracknell Forest to assist in this vital programme. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would the seconder like to speak?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. So yeah, just to support everything that Councillor Birch has said, I think this is a really, really important long-term initiative and clearly a significant investment in terms of personnel and resource to do this. A huge amount of work is done working with our residents to find themselves with a need to access these services. And I know you've referenced Gillian, it's done with a sensitivity and a purpose, which is absolutely important in terms of rehabilitation and supporting people through the various stages of addiction and recovery. We're very strong advocates in this council for this approach, as that we know by doing this that we maintain and strengthen effective households, we reduce the risks of homelessness and things like that. And I think therefore having this focus on it will work well. And actually I'm pleased, Leader, that you've appointed Councillor Birch to do this for two reasons. One is that he'll do a good job, and secondly, it's not me. But no, the serious point is I think it's important, given the lead on health and wellbeing, that we have a strong, clear political lead on this. And I know that he'll refer back to us and through those other forums as and when necessary.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Are there any other contributions? No, in which case would Councillor Birch like to sum up?
Thank you, Chair. I think we're all aware of circumstances going on nationally and internationally as the cost of living crisis hits us. So I really can't think of a better time to be looking at this, particularly focusing on the supply chain, making absolutely certain that the treatments we have available are local and that they work. And here in Bracknell Forest, they do. And also the reducing the demand is a key factor, and you can't start telling people about the importance to their health of being drug-free too young. So let's get on with it, and I commend this to the committee.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Can we please have a show of hands? Thank you. That is carried unanimously. Thank you. And takes us to item 7, which is the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman's annual letter, and that's to be introduced by Timothy Whedon, Chief Executive.
Thank you, Leader. And this is a report that we get every year from the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman, which we put in front of members at of the executive in a public meeting. The two overriding messages, I think, from this one was the first is that there were 8 findings of fault against us by the LGSO during the year. That's 8 findings of fault out of millions of transactions that take place during the course of the year, which I think is important context. Now, that's not to say that there were only 8 complaints, because clearly there were far more than that, but most of them fortunately get resolved locally without needing recourse to the Local Government Social Care Ombudsman. I think the second part of the overriding message is that the level of complaints that we get is broadly similar to similar sorts of authorities as well, so that we're not an outlier in any shape or form. If you look at the annex, which includes the summary of the 8 complaints, then you'll see that it does reflect to an extent the problems that we experienced with the SEND services. I think one of the things that I take heart from is that we are beginning to make progress on that. We've got the written statement of action, which has been accepted without any modification. I think the other thing that I would take heart in terms of the realization and the realism within the organisation is that in each of the 3 cases that relate directly to SEND, the remedy that's suggested by the Ombudsman, I think, is exactly the same as the remedy that we had already suggested at the stage 3 of our own internal complaints process. So it's not as if we'd been saying there's not a problem here and the Ombudsman comes along and says that there is. I think that there's always scope for us to improve, and this report from the Ombudsman is actually a helpful way in summarising the areas where there are challenges for us, and so that's quite good. I think the last thing that I would just point out is that the Ombudsman has recognised an improvement in the relationship between the council and the Ombudsman in the last year, and seems to put that down to a change in behaviour on behalf of the council, which I can assure members is not the case. We've been responding in exactly the same way, and it simply wouldn't occur to the Ombudsman that they've not asked as many silly questions this year as we've had in previous years, and that's why it's improved. But overall, I think a helpful report from the Ombudsman and showing reasonably strong performance from the council.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Are there any questions following that report? No? No? Okay, fine. In which case, I don't think that the Chief Executive has left me very much more to add. But I'd like to move.
Shall we formally move that we accept it, Chair, first?
Yeah, I'd like to move that we accept.
Yeah, I'll second that
Thank
for
you.
you.
That is, and as I say, I don't think there's much more to be said. We should be, as ever, very proud of our record here, and but that doesn't mean for 1 minute that we can afford to be complacent. But we take note, and that is what we're asked to do now. So, does the seconder like to speak?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So, I'd like to thank the Chief Exec for his report on this. I think when you sort of tease through it, you sort of realise that we kind of take on board the you know, in all seriousness, the learning points from this, and in particular, Chief Exec made reference to SEND, and I think, you know, it is very much the case now that some of the responses that we receive, the responses received there, coupled with the other information, has actually helped the improvement that we're now seeing in those service areas. And I think aligned to that is the realism and understanding of the journey that the council's on. And I think, you know, it should not be underestimated that the solution proposed, you know, by the Ombudsman to this was that which was in the pipeline from Bratton Forest that would indicate that actually, you know, that level of decision making, you know, to plans and things like that are strong. But we take each and every complaint we receive seriously. As the Chief Exec said, that before it gets to the Ombudsman, there are various other, you know, levels through the complaints process. And I think as members and officers frequently involved in those discussions around learning from complaints as to how to improve things, recognises the challenges around communications. And I think it's also fair to say that in this particular service area, right across the piece there, we're working with some families in very vulnerable and challenging situations, and, you know, we're interacting them with in a way that is immensely difficult, and to some families very distressing and very challenging, and creates a lot of anger and emotion in this. And I think because of that, you know, how we respond to the complaints received, and actually the numbers that get through that show we're in line with other councils, suggest that we are a listening council, we have a learning culture, and that we do learn from those issues, and you know, that hopefully that then improves our service delivery in the years ahead. But I think it's you know, it's a reflection of where we are, and I think, you know, the reassurance I can give colleagues here is that we're working on those areas which were highlighted by the Ombudsman over the last 12 months.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to comment? No? Then I don't think I need to say anything in terms of summing up, other than I support very much indeed the sentiments expressed by Councillor Dr. Barnard, and would colleagues please show their support. Thank you. That is unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. And in the same similar vein, and we move on to Agenda 8, which is the Council Plan Overview Report, once again to be introduced by our Chief Executive.
Thank you again, Leader. So I'll be brief because this relates to the period April to June, and important that we check on the progress in that period, but obviously our focus is now looking forward. The metrics in terms of progress against the council plan and service plan objectives look reasonably secure in terms of the key actions and the performance indicators. There are just 4 items that I highlight from the report. The first is that this was when we were actually responding to the Ukrainian refugee crisis. There were a number of places. There were 82 guests arrived within the borough in the period to the end of June. And by and large, that went very smoothly. Of course, as we move forward, as has been in the national news, then there may well be challenges to homelessness services if some of the places break down at the end of the 6-month period. So that's going to be very much on the agenda for the council looking forward. The second highlight that I would focus on is the opening of Heathlands and the joint work with both the CCG, which has become the ICS, and also the Frimley Health Trust and Windsor Care to allow that to happen. And then also this was the period in which we had the Ofsted inspection of our children's services, which we now know resulted in a result of outstanding, which is as it says. And then I think just finally to highlight the point, one of the hidden services that in terms of IT, that this is when we completed an infrastructure project to transfer the council's telephony to Microsoft Teams. these things are often lost, but the fact that there was no disruption to our telephony services whilst that project took place, and most people probably won't even realise that we've done it, I think is a testimony to the work that was done in the ICT team in doing that. Happy to answer any questions, Chairman.
Thanks very much. Thank you. Are there any questions? No? Then I'd like to move acceptance of the report, if that can be seconded. Thank you very much, Councillor Birch. And in saying, saying that once again, the Council has performed well, and as the Chief Executive just pointed out, one of the really quality outcomes from this council is, whilst we are our attention is taken up with matters of the moment, we still run the day job, and we're still carrying on delivering services. And as the Chief Executive pointed out, the team's implementation was just one of those services which doesn't miss a beat, even though something major is happening. And that I think I would normally at this point ask that the Chief Executive take back our congratulations to the heads of departments, but given his rather limited time of availability for doing that, I'm sure that our Deputy Chief Executive will be able to carry the news back to colleagues in CMT about just how pleased we are. And so with that, would the seconder like to speak?
Briefly, I think as with our overview reports, it demonstrates to our residents we do set ourselves stretching targets, and we do monitor, and we do focus on improving where the arrows aren't pointing in the right direction. Yeah. And I think that's a key message. This is a high-performing council that works hard to make sure it improves even when it is performing highly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else wish to say anything? No? In which case, would all those in favour please show? Thank you. That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Before I announce exclusion, I think it would be opportune to mark this as the last meeting of the executive that the Chief Executive has assisted with, and indeed, as I mentioned yesterday, I think it's around about his 300th executive meeting, so quite an achievement in itself. And I'd like to express and record a vote of thanks from the entire executive to the Chief Executive for his guidance, his support, his leadership, and all the other things that have made him an exemplary Chief Exec and made us the envy of many other councils around the country that we have him and they didn't. So, and I'd like to, on behalf of all the executive, wish you, Tim, a long, happy and healthy retirement, which has been extremely well earned.
No more silly questions.
Thank you. That is, and I take it that every hand is in favour. Yes, it is. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Leader.
Thank you, Tim. With that, we move to exclusion of the public and press. That's seconded. Thank you.